Right, I'm surrounded by super interesting equipments right in front of me here. Maybe you could share a little more about this equipment.
This is a VR headset, a MetaQuest 2 that we can all check out.
Hi everyone, and greetings from the Undergraduate Research Opportunities Program. My name is Loshni Ravindran, and seated beside me is my co-host, Ms. Siti Fatima. Together, we are here to host yet again another series of our UG Research Diaries, where we interview accomplished researchers and passionate student undergraduate researchers from across the different faculties and departments of NUS. The Undergraduate Research Opportunities Program, otherwise known as UROP, seeks to engage students in the various research activities in, within, and across all the disciplines, and it is also there to enhance the intellectual process of inquiry. REX, which is also our recent launch, stands for Research Experience and is an optional course upgrade to UROP. The enhancement seeks to further delve upon research foundations and enable students to explore scope for future research developments in their UROP project.
Today, we are honored to have two passionate geographers with us, committed to wildlife conservation through several collaborative efforts. One, a senior lecturer and an assistant director of Bachelor of Environmental Studies from Geography Department. She is an accomplished researcher with extensive field experience in environmental conservation and restoration, a winner of 3 consecutive Faculty Teaching Excellence Awards and 2 consecutive NUS Annual Digital Education Awards. She uses diverse range of study designs, methods to address scientific questions that tackles a spectrum of challenges in conservation and restoration.
The other is a very own student who also hails from the Department of Geography. He is a REX Fellow who has just completed his honours thesis. He has notably been one of the contributors of the first documented record of a lone Sunda pangolin in the Singapore Botanic Gardens in 2023. And he has also served as the project director of the NUS Geography Challenge in the 56th Committee of the NUS Geographical Society.
Without any further ado, we are pleased to welcome Dr. Gretchen and Luz.
All right. So I think this is really a very chaotic time in which we are interviewing you guys because, we did a quick research about you and we realized that, both of you were actually featured in the Straits Times recently for your research work. This is really remarkable. I mean, I've read a lot of very interesting adventures you guys have had, but it all boils down to one question. What exactly kind of got you all interested in research in the first place? Maybe you could start with Dr. Gretchen first.
That's a long way back, but from what I can remember, I've always preferred to be in nature and wilderness and exploring wild areas.
Right.
And from childhood, we grew up going to the beach, going camping, spending my summers in the mountains, North Georgia mountains and North Carolina mountains, kayaking and hiking and backpacking. And then that got me interested in science and asking lots of questions about these places that I explored. And really it was 2 things that I can remember. It was in 9th grade, I went to the Fernbank Science Center, the Natural History Museum in Atlanta, where I grew up, for a special science program for 9 weeks. And each week we studied something different, from geology, ornithology to botany. I remember planting, and I still have a couple of those plants from many years ago, to astronomy and everything under the sun. Entomology, even.
Wow.
Finding insects in rivers and creeks and streams. And so then that inspired me to do a science fair project in my senior year about Nancy Creek, where I grew up. A small stream that was being impacted by the development that was popping up all around it, as well as all around Atlanta, where we had one of the few trout streams in all of the world. Flowing through Atlanta, Georgia. Well, we were finding less and less trout because of this development. And so what I did is I studied water quality impacts along Nancy Creek leading into the Chattahoochee River, and I won first prize.
Wow, that's amazing.
And not just at my school, but at the whole state level, I think. Yeah,
right.
I remember correctly.
Right. I think it's really remarkable that, the thirst for knowledge that you have kind of also has opened your lenses to not just your area of study, but to disciplines beyond, you know. I love that diversity, actually. And I think that would certainly have trickled down to your student as well. So, Louis, is there any anecdote or some sort of a moment that made you feel that, you know, I really want to pursue research?
Thank you so much for your question. So I think the moment that really got me started into research was when I took the course in the Geography Department, GE 2101, which is titled Methods and Practices in Geography, taught by Dr. Gretchen and Dr. Nathan Green. The why I mentioned about that course is because in that course itself, we were actually exposed to different geographical methods, not just in the human geography aspect, but also in the physical geography aspect. So during that course itself, we were actually tasked to do a field notebook where we go down to a site of our choice to actually conduct like human and physical geography methods. So for example, for human geography, we get to do like interviews with the people in the field site, asking about the kind of activities that they do there, why do they go to the site often, for example. And then we also get to participate in the activities that they do as well through participant observations. And not only that, for the physical geography aspect, we got to choose like a tree of our choice in the entire field site, and then we get to actually collect like leaves that fall on the ground, right? And then to apply the scientific method to, for example, measure like the length of the tree leaves, and from there we can actually map out like the growth of like the tree, for example. There's so much more to research just beyond that course. That was when actually Dr. Gretchen actually promoted in the class that she had this research opportunity at the Singapore Botanic Gardens that particular year. So I decided that since it was the pandemic, I decided to take the leap of faith, and I wrote to Dr. Gretchen to ask more about the opportunity, and I really learned a lot like beyond the classroom and get to apply all the different theories and the scientific methods that we learn in class into practice, and that was really fascinating for me. Yeah.
Okay, Louis, so as a RETS fellow from the pilot batch, what are some experiences that you had in the RETS course upgrade, and how does this help in your learning journey?
So during the REX program, we actually had the opportunity to choose elective workshops based on our own interests. I actually chose two, which is the data storytelling workshop as well as the AI in research workshop. So firstly, the AI in research workshop actually taught us about how we can actually utilize AI tools to help us effectively in our research. During the time where I took the REX program, that was actually when AI actually rose to prominence. And at that point of time, us students, we know about the existence about these tools, but we weren't really sure as to like how we could really use these tools properly, in a proper manner, ethically, and how we can use it effectively in our research. But through the workshop itself, we actually had the practical experience on how we can actually conduct literature search, for example, to generate ideas from there and to really help us with our research. And next was the data storytelling workshop. So like what you mentioned, I actually did my honors thesis in the previous semester. And how that was helpful was because in my thesis, I actually had like lots of data to analyze and to write about. But the data storytelling workshop actually taught us how we can turn this data into a storyboard to actually make it engaging for the readers to engage with our data instead of like presenting it in a very boring kind of manner, but in a more engaging manner to engage the readers. So that was really helpful for me.
Thank you for sharing your experiences in RETS program. We are glad to hear that the RETS workshops, such as data storytelling workshops and also AI in research workshops, has benefited you in your learning journey.
And, one thing, like, just based on the few things you've shared so far, I mean, we are really kind of, in a way, mesmerized by the serendipity of how you both have come together as a teacher-student duo. In fact, this is our very first teacher-student duo interview, for that matter, coincidentally. And, in regard to that, I mean, Dr. Gretchen, now, from a mentor's point of view, you are seeing your student grow in many ways possible, really introspecting about how they could, maximize their research learning. So in that respect, Dr. Gretchen, what were some of the considerations that you had when actually pursuing a career in research?
It wasn't until I found my passion in the discipline of ecology that I really got excited about research. And now I'm interested in so many different fields of research. And I really appreciate the interdisciplinarity that NUS is focusing on, because my research in restoration, ecology, we need the knowledge of the soil moisture, the biology of the plants,
right,
and everything else. It's Earth System Sciences, we call it. But it wasn't until I went on a student exchange program to Freiburg, Germany, that I got really excited about the environmental science field and ecology. I the only way I could graduate is if I did my honors thesis at this research institute that one of the professors at my university had a connection with. And they made, at that point, a call on a landline phone, and they said, can you please help my student? Because she's really excited about the environmental field. They said, okay, she can work on a research project about acid rain and the impacts of acid rain or acid precipitation on the forest, the Black Forest in Germany. And so I got to study plant physiology, plant physiology in German, and at the Baden-Württemberg Forest Research Center. And that inspired me to go back to my university and take all sorts of ecology and environmental courses. Interdisciplinarity is incredibly important in the field that I study now, wetland restoration ecology. When we go to restore a mangrove ecosystem, we need all types of scientists and geographers, from hydrologists and geomorphologists to ecologists like myself, wildlife biologists, botanists, environmental planners, landscape architects, and even environmental engineers, all working as a team to come up with solutions to restoring mangrove ecosystems or whatever ecosystem we're working on. We can't know it all, but working together collaboratively to come up with solutions is incredibly important. And this is the way I teach in my courses, interdisciplinary.
It's wonderful. Luis, can you please share about the conference that you have attended?
So the conference that I attended was actually the 10th World Conference of Ecological Restoration. So why was this conference important is because currently actually we are in the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration, which focuses on upscaling ecosystem restoration projects all around the world. So this was actually the first meeting since the UN Decade was actually convened by the United Nations. This was the first time where all the academics and researchers in the field of ecological restoration gathered together to share about what they are doing in this UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration and sharing of the best practices. During the conference, I shared about upscaling the Singapore Botanic Gardens project, which I worked on for my UROPS. And then in my REX, I actually upscaled this project to the Kinabatangan River in Sabah, Malaysia and Borneo. So I worked with a community co-op called COPEL, where they do tree planting projects to restore wildlife habitats. So what I did for the UROPS project was actually, during my UROPS project, we actually had wildlife cameras placed around different locations around the Singapore Botanic Gardens to monitor wildlife activity. So one interesting fact is that on New Year's Day in 2022, we actually found a Sunder pangolin at one of our sites, and that was where we discovered the first ever pangolin found at the Botanic Gardens, and that was actually published in the Nature in Singapore journal and the Straits Times. Yeah. So following that, COPEL also has their set of camera traps placed all around the Kinabatangan River, and they have a huge amount of camera trap data, but they really need help analyzing the data and organizing the data, etc. So that was what I did for my REX project, where I actually went down to the site to actually work with the community members to figure out what are some of the technical skills that they require. So for example, like how to process the camera trap data, that's one. Number two, then how can we map all this camera trap data into GIS? And then that was where I actually created like a set of videos to guide the community members, because we cannot really be there with the community all the time. So through these short form videos, like I aim to really help the community to be able to do this kind of data analysis, even though we may not be there, for example. So this was what I shared during the conference itself about how I actually upscaled from the Singapore Botanic Gardens project to another different context, which is in COPEL, and sharing from a youth perspective on what we can do as a youth in the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration.
Oh, thank you for sharing. Your experience and efforts are truly admirable.
And, speaking of which, like, we got to hear about Luis, talking about this really invigorating conference experience, I must say. And, in that light, I also like to take reference back to Dr. Gretchen's work. And, as an ecologist, Dr. Gretchen, you have really taken immense efforts, great efforts actually, in having students like Luis develop better understanding of their ecosystems, threats, and be it local community connections. So, what kind of motivated you to take up this effort?
Well, I arrived here during the pandemic. I was the first in FASS to arrive on the ground in August 2020. I didn't know anyone. We were on Zoom University.
Understand.
And Lewis was one of the first students I met at an open house for geography. And I brought props like this. He said, bring some props. And so I brought some props. And we did an open house on Zoom. I thought, wow, I really want to meet more students, even though we had to social distance and we couldn't meet them in person. And so I came up with this idea to create a research program at the Singapore Botanic Gardens. It was actually already in the works with my graduate students, but I thought, oh, I can get undergraduate students involved, and they're thirsty for knowledge about nature and wildlife, and they want to get their hands dirty in the field.
That's awesome.
And at my former university, it was hard to get one or two undergraduates excited about what I do.
Right.
So one of the first weeks of my research methods course that Lewis was telling us about, I sent out an email and I announced it in class, and I said, anyone want to work on a research project with me this summer? And I thought, okay, I can manage a couple of people. If they get really excited, we'll get 5. I think I got 40 students that applied.
Oh, wow. That's great.
It was a bit overwhelming. And in fact, so we had an online training. And then when we started our in-person field training, we only had 1 day. And then we went back into 2 packs.
Oh.
So we were having lunch with the Botanic Gardens arborist, and we were scratching our heads thinking, how are we going to do this? We don't know how long we have to wait before we can get back in the field. So Lewis and his friends said, let's make some videos, training videos. We have 1 more day until we have to, we're not allowed to be in the field. So we got out there that next day. I was in my director's chair, and these guys were in actor mode, and we made a series of something like 10 or 12 videos that professors still use today for research methods, training them on all these different techniques that ecologists, environmental scientists, and physical geographers use. Right. So that was the beginning of our research together. I have been working in Sabah, Malaysia, and Borneo for 10 years, and Laos and Indochina for about 17 years. That's what brought me to NUS. And so I wanted to bring the wilderness, I guess, that I grew up with in my childhood from all around Southeast Asia to my students at NUS, and then inspire them after the pandemic to go out there and work with these communities that are doing restoration projects around the region. So that was my inspiration. Lewis and his friends were some of the first to start doing this. And it's so exciting as we continue to work with Europe's Rex. Maybe we'll even get out into the field this summer.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Right. I mean, that's really innovative. I think as we progress more and more into the interview, I don't mean to make a pun here, but even though you guys are from geography, I'm really admiring the chemistry that you share between your teacher and students. I know the virus has covered on chemistry, but anyways, back to this point that you have just shared. So, as you guys move forward to really using technology, I'm also very curious to learn more about how you guys have been using this 360 virtual reality field trip experience. I do see equipment here that's relevant to my question. Maybe you could just share a little more about this 360 field trip that you've initiated. Maybe you could share a little more about this equipment.
This is a VR headset. A MetaQuest 2 that we can all check out in the library, Central Library. So I was inspired during the pandemic to bring wild Borneo and the wilderness areas all around Southeast Asia to my students because we couldn't get them out there in the field on field courses. So one of my friends in Borneo is a producer.
Right.
And he's been working on BBC Discovery Nat Geo films, underwater filming for the past 25 years. And we were talking and we thought, wow, why not try 360 filming and bringing those ecosystems around the tropics to our students here during the pandemic and beyond? Because most students don't scuba dive or don't snorkel or don't even swim. And so we wanted to bring the beauty of the underwater world, which is really another world,
that's splendid,
to our students, and the beauty of the coral reef, which we're right next to here in Singapore. We applied for some funding. The Provost's office was grateful enough to, of our kind of crazy idea to make these films, gave us some funding, and we hired an underwater film photographer, filmmaker, videographer, and he helped us make our very own first 360 film called Roots to Reefs 360, connecting the mangrove roots to the coral reefs. And even actually starting high in the mountains in Sabah, Malaysia, and Borneo, going down the river systems to the estuary mangroves and coral reefs, how all these aquatic ecosystems are connected. And my inspiration for the Roots to Reefs 360 film was trying to get my students to understand connections between all the tropical aquatic ecosystems, from the headwater streams to the larger rivers, estuaries, mangrove ecosystems, all the way to the coral reefs. Impacts from upstream affect the downstream ecosystems. And this concept of a catchment, how there's a network of streams that are all connected down to the coral reefs. This is something I was finding on Zoom University that my students weren't getting. And it turns out is a pretty difficult concept for them. So by actually putting this headset on, you can even put your glasses in it. Put this headset on, you can pretend like you're either flying above the mountains like this, or that you're swimming or diving under the sea, right? Wow, look at that shark. I really see the excitement of my students in the 360 headset. We started partnering with the Central Library, the Tech Central Group, Stephen Chow and his team, and we brought this Roots to Reefs film and others that we've made now to their 360 IMAX experience. It's a 6 meter in diameter cylinder where you can see everything around you, right? And so we can go and learn collectively as instructors, professors, and students, and ask questions, stop the film, discuss. It's really been just out of this world to be able to be almost feeling like you're in an aquarium underwater, right?
Absolutely.
And then finally, we've been able to use drones. I bought this about a year ago. So this is our 360 drone camera by Insta360. It's called the Sphere, or the invisible drone. So in that headset, when you look up, you won't be able to see this little helicopter. Yeah. You really feel immersed in the ecosystem. So this is 180, a lens that shows 180 and another one that shows 180. In the editorial process, we stitch these together and we've made our own 3-minute films, as well as we learned how to film underwater over the last recess.
Wow.
So I'd just like to add on to what Dr. Coffman has shared. So I was actually in the class with Dr. Coffman during the pandemic in the GE3255, Aquatic, Coastal, and Riparian Ecosystems. And in the class, it was really quite difficult to visualize like what a catchment is, what an estuary is, what's the connections between the roots to the reefs. And when Dr. Coffman actually approached me to ask if I would like to join this project to actually film in 360 and with the drone to really show these concepts to future batches of the course. So I was really excited to take on this opportunity to really explore about what truly a catchment is and the connections from roots to reefs. And when I first went to Sabah, Malaysia with Dr. Coffman to do the filming, I was really amazed because that was really my first time seeing what a real meander is, seeing like a real oxbow lake, seeing an estuary, and really learning from the filmmaker how to film a 360 project, for example. And even that was my first time learning how to fly a drone. So from this experience itself, it was really an exciting and eye-opening experience for me. And besides that, throughout the entire filming process, I also got to interact with many community members in Sabah, Malaysia, and one of the communities being Kopel. And that was when actually I interacted with the community science leaders. And that was when I actually learned that they actually really need the technical expertise and the help in terms of like their data management and their GIS skills management, which really sparked this idea of me wanting to upscale whatever that we have done for the Singapore Botanic Gardens project, like such as the creation of like training videos to help them, for example, and really to work with them closely to devise solutions for their needs, for example. So, and that was when the Rex opportunity was presented to me. I immediately thought of this as my Rex enhancement, for example. One final point to add on was that we also managed to bring the film back to all the different communities all around Sabah, Malaysia. I think I'd like to share one very touching personal anecdote for myself throughout this entire process of bringing the film back into the different communities was that during my birthday, like last year, for example, and one moment that really touched me was when we actually brought this film to the Bajau Laut community, which is in a remote island of Kalapuan, where actually the whole entire community, they are actually stateless itself. And what was actually touching to me was that when we brought this film to the community and showed them the film, they were actually really excited to see, oh, that's Kinabatangan River. That is actually Mount Kinabalu. They only have heard of like these places or probably seen them in pictures, for example, but they have not really been there in person, even though they live in Sabah itself. Right. And this film actually not just teaches NUS students about this kind of ecosystem connections, but also bring these magical ecosystems to the communities themselves. Even though they may be living in the beach right next to the coral triangle, but they do not have the opportunity to dive in, to look at the seagrass meadows and the coral reefs. By showing them the film, they could really see the different ecosystems that are just right in front of them. And that was really a touching moment for me. Yeah,
that's beautiful. Yeah. This is really, a lot of wonderful sharing. And I guess, we would like to thank both of you for actually giving us such a wonderful interview.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gretchen and Louis, for the wonderful interview. Just one last question. What advice would you give to our undergraduate students who are interested in research? Dr. Gretchen, please.
Join one of our explorations of Southeast Asia by signing up through Rex.
Oh, nice. How about Louis?
For me, my advice would be for undergraduates to take the leap of faith to seize any research opportunity that they have. Yeah.
To all our viewers, thank you so much for your support thus far. We are pleased to share that we are business as usual on our social media platforms, which are X, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and not to mention, we are also now on LinkedIn. And here's another update. We have also just created our new undergraduate research website that's just available in the link shown below here. And also, we would like to further encourage many more students to actually consider pursuing research at the undergraduate level itself. We have been expanding recently to all the different faculties we had on board: FOS, FASS. We are having NUSC, which is one of our new recent additions to the whole multiverse of opportunities that we are creating. And we also have Biz School that's coming on board. We look forward to creating and collaborating more opportunities, and we look forward to you to Rexing up, because with Rex, you own your opportunities. Thank you.